Hey, it's Sarah. Welcome to today's episode. I've been spurred on by the IA recommendation to do something about authenticity. So today's episode is going to be all about authenticity, being the real you, and restoring yourself. Because how often do many of us move really far away from who we really are? Unintentionally, we don't realize that it's happening, but we're giving away pieces of ourselves all the time. And we bring different parts of ourselves into different conversations and different interactions. And so, today we're going to look at being the real you. And I have my quote. So we've got the New Testament, Corinthians 2, and it's section 13, verse 5. Examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not realize that Christ Jesus is in you? Unless, of course, you fail the test. Ooh, failing the test. And I've talked about things being a test, like a spiritual test or a soul test. If life was like one very long examination, and by examination, I don't mean like a medical examination, although that's one context or one interpretation. I mean like GCSEs, A-level results, etc. type examination, like one long test. So I'll just say the quote again. Examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not realize that Christ Jesus is in you? Unless, of course, you fail the test. Ooh. So, does that mean that if you don't have Christ Jesus in you, then you've failed? I suppose that's what it's saying, isn't it? It's basically saying Jesus first, God first. Everything else comes after that. If you haven't got God and Jesus first in your life, and you don't recognize that Jesus is actually in you at a cellular level, that we each have DNA or connections to the ancestry of Jesus, then how can we really be our authentic selves in our lives? So this is a really interesting topic, right? We want to be our real selves. We want to show up. We want to be authentic. We don't want people to think that we're fake. But at the same time, how many masks do we all wear all the time, every day? I mean, we're all doing it, right? Everybody does it. It's, some people do it for survival, right? Whether that's in the workplace or whether that's in a relationship, in family connections, in other forms of interactions on the surface. If you're a public figure, for example, how many masks would you have to wear then? How many different parts of yourself are you bringing into your different actions, whether it's you behave differently on one social media platform than you do on another, or you interact with friends in one state differently than you do in another state. If you're in the US, or a county, if you're in the UK, they call it a county. Again, regional shifts. Friend or foe, how do we show up for friends or foes? Are we always our consistent, authentic self in that context? So this is really interesting, right? This whole concept of examining yourself to begin with. So check yourself, basically. Look at how you're living your life. Are you living your life in a way that is in the faith? Are you living your life in a way that is decent? And again, decent can be subjective, right? People do all sorts of things that are indecent. And that's, we live in a sick world. And we can't deny that the world has got some challenges, right? There's stuff going on out there, as I always say, where only the power of love and faith can really overcome it. And I'm not saying this to convert people or preaching to people. I'm saying this because I see a problem and I see challenges in society, and I feel that there are opportunities to improve it. And where does that improvement begin? It begins with yourself, right? Where does any change or transformation start? It starts by looking in the mirror and saying, okay, so which part of me am I either neglecting, or which part of me is inauthentic in this interaction? Where am I not being my real self? And who would I be if I was my real self? Would I be angrier? Would I be more creative? Would I be more conforming? Would my behavior change? Would my tone of voice change? This is where it gets really interesting, right? This is where we get into all those different jigsaw pieces of our soul and the wellspring of our soul, which is, it's a wonderful thing, to be overflowing in soul grace. But there are times where we have to check ourselves and we have to think, is this the response of a Christian? Is this a godly behavior? Or whatever your belief system is, it's interesting. So yeah, we're living in unique times where fakeness is actually de rigueur. And by that, I mean, it's like the norm. And so considering how we can be our best, most authentic selves, being our real selves, involves digging deep. It involves digging deep and sacrificing those parts of ourselves that we recognize and we know, this isn't authentic. This isn't who I am. I am not this woman. I am not this man. I am not this label that's been attached to me. We love labels now, right? Everybody has a label. So I find that quite, I'm curious about it in terms of how it will affect the next generation. So having like multiple tags or multiple denominations that we recognize ourselves as, and then the effect of that. Whereas really we could just be like ubiquitous. We're all humans, right? So if we had no labels, it would just be, I'm human. I'm human. I'm a human being. I am what I am. I'm struggling. I'm doing the best I can. Most human beings are in pain or have experienced pain of some sort. So I'm showing up, okay? I'm showing up. I'm being the best version of myself that I can be right now, carrying everything that I've been through. And there's a lot of that, around walking in the shoes of the other, and the role of empathy and being able to almost take on, like go into the chrysalis. And when you're in the chrysalis, the cocoon of the nadir, as they call it in Jungian psychology, and the nadir is part of the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, where the protagonist is given a mission. There is a mission, and they suddenly realize that they have something greater that they have to do. They have a legacy that they have to leave. And because they have to leave this legacy, they start out on their quest. And Robert Johnson writes about this beautifully, particularly in terms of masculine psychology and the anima, and whether or not the dragon should be slayed or the princess should be rescued from the tower. And that is the eternal conflict that goes on within men, is should the dragon be slayed or should I rescue the princess? And being able to understand how to be in the world, whether it's as a masculine figure or a feminine figure or a non-binary figure. This is what's really interesting now about what's happening with the LGBTQ movement, is we're seeing much more morphing of gender stereotypes and merging, or even the dissolution of gender stereotypes, which I think is brilliant, because this is all just human constructs, like time. Watches are a human construct. Time is a human construct. Aging is a human construct. So back to being our authentic self, because I've digressed down a rabbit hole of a labyrinth of Robert Johnson's psychology. Really what I think most people, and I'd love to do this at some point, if the channel grows and becomes popular, I'd probably hire someone to help me out with it. But I'd love to go around and ask people, what's the one thing that you wish for humanity? What's the one thing that you wish for? And they could, it'd be really interesting to see if they are like driven by self-interest and they say, I want something for myself, or my own self-betterment. And there are a lot of very humble people out there who do say, you know, I'm still not good enough. I'm still a work in progress, you know. I will never be that perfect finished parcel that's ready for the retail shelf. I'm like a raggy doll. I'm in the faulty box with the teddy bears, with the missing ears and scratched eyes and things like that, you know. And I think recognizing that perhaps most of us are raggy dolls, and we're all out here just doing what we can, doing the best we can, trying to add value as much as possible, wherever possible, it's helpful. It gives us more context, particularly in terms of patience as well, like day-to-day interactions. I've noticed I'm so much more patient. Sometimes, I'll caveat that, sometimes I'm so much more patient because I actually can see the frustration and agitation of others, and I recognise what that energetically is and what it does to people. And I try and give them like a grace bubble where they can sit in their grace bubble to feel and be that childlike version of themselves that needs to like let out their frustration, anger and emotions, but also hold that space for them. So, you know, the key thing is that you are your own person, right? The key thing is that you're your own person, and you're loving and respecting yourself. You're cherishing yourself, you're trusting yourself, and you're believing yourself. So thanks so much for listening today. And as always, be present, be at peace, be on purpose, and value you.